So basically there was this guy, Naran, and he was like, when I grow up, I want to be Horatio Pagani and Christian von Koenigsegg. So people were like, oh, that's so cute. You want to make cars? And he was like, no, I want to have lots of cash. So people were like, oh. So logically, what did he do when he became an adult? Yep, he started a private jet business. And yep, that's got nothing to do with cool cars. But it's got a lot to do with having a lot of cash. So then he was like, I should do cars. So he did. And that's how a car company that no one knew existed until a few days ago was created. Cool, right? You know what's cooler? Ice. But then, fast forward a few days, he was like, so now I've got a car company. What should I do? And someone was like, well, cars. So he was like, interesting. So he did just that, cars. But not just any cars, a 2+2 Hyper Coupe. Now, I'm not a mathematician, but that seems really cool. And it was indeed cool. In fact, it was the first of its kind. But how did it get to this final product, you may ask? Well, I'm happy you did ask, because I was about to tell you anyways. But before, I don't know your life, so I can't make assumptions. But if you don't use a VPN from ExpressVPN to watch Netflix, let me ask you a question. Why? Like if you're willing to pay $8.99 to have let's say 1,000 movies and TV shows, why wouldn't you be willing to pay the same price to add 5,000 movies and TV shows at your disposition? So if you're the type of guy to doing lemonade with 2 stones to kill lemons, well, you can buy and support Rev Media at the same time. The link is in the description. Love ya. And by the way, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to never miss an upload. And if you don't, then I'll become a sad person. And back to the video. So basically, Mr. Naran, that we're going to call Dad for the rest of the video, was at the factory where he was about to make his first car. And he was like, hey guys. And the engineers were like, hey guy. And he was like, let's do a car entirely made of bread. And they were like, no. So he was like, oh, okay. Carbon fiber then? And they were like, yes. But what about the wheels? And the chief engineer was like, okay guys, let's put 22-inch hybrid carbon wheels on his car. So Dad was like, what's that? What's hybrid carbon wheels? And the chief engineer was like, I don't know, LOL. So the engineers were like, but what about the interior? And Dad was like, let's put Swallow Lavu trim. And the chief engineer was like, what's that? So he was like, oh, sorry, I thought we were making words up. So the chief engineer was like, no, we're not. So he was like, okay, so what should the interior be like? And the chief engineer was like, flax carbon. So he was like, what's that? So the chief engineer was like, I don't know, LOL. So Dad went back home and cried all night long because it reminded him of his childhood bullying. LOL. But the next day he came to the factory and was like, hey guys. And they were like, hey guy. So he said, we're going to do 49 of them. Any questions? And one guy was like, well, why not 50? So he said, because I said so. You're fired, by the way. Any more questions? And then during the day they were doing, the things okay, I don't know how to build a car. But they were working on the suspension, and one guy was like, what is it exactly that we're doing? And his friend was like, a GT3 car. So what do you mean? And the other guy was like, no, the suspension, what is it? And the other guy was like, oh, well, it's a double wishbone suspension with Öhlins 4-way adjustable dampers. So the other guy was like, oh, okay, listen, I lied on my resume. I wasn't a suspension engineer for Bugatti, like I said, man. You gotta help me. I got no idea what we're doing here. I used to work at Starbucks. So the other guy was like, oh. So the next day, little Timmy wasn't there anymore. Legend says that he went back to his Starbucks job, met a girl there, and had a lot of happy children with her. But anyways, I'm rambling. So the next day at the factory, Dad was like, hey guys. And the guys were like, hey guy. So he was like, we're currently deciding on the engine and the performance of the car. Anyone has ideas? And one engineer was like, front mid-engine, twin-turbo 5-liter V8 from German firm Racing Dynamics producing 1,048 horsepower and 764 pound-feet of torque, which will get it from 0 to 60 miles per hour in less than 2.3 seconds, 1 to 100 miles per hour in 4.56 seconds, and a top speed in excess of 230 miles per hour. So Dad was like, No, you're fired, by the way. And then the next day, Dad went to the chief engineer and was like, hey, guy. And the chief engineer was like, hey, guy. So Dad was like, I thought of something special yesterday, something that will completely change how people view GT3 street legal cars. So the guy was like, okay, well, what is it? And he was like, Well, the car could be a front mid-engine, twin turbocharged 5-liter V8 from German firm Racing Dynamics producing 1,048 horsepower and 764 pound-feet of torque, which will get it from 0 to 60 miles per hour in less than 2.3 seconds, 0 to 100 miles per hour in 4.56 seconds, and a top speed in excess of 230 miles per hour. Cool, right? And the chief engineer was like, a front mid-engine twin turbocharged 5-liter V8 from German firm Racing Dynamics producing 1,048 horsepower and 764 pound-feet of torque, which will get it from 0 to 60 miles per hour in less than 2.3 seconds, 1 to 100 miles per hour in 4.56 seconds, and a top speed in excess of 230 miles per hour? Isn't that the same thing that one of the engineers said yesterday? So Dad was like, well, technically he said something that could potentially resemble what I just said, but no, it was my idea. And the chief engineer was like, okay. And the next day, Dad was like, hey guys. And they were like, hey guy, we're currently working on the aerodynamic elements of the car. So a large front splitter, rear wing, and rear diffuser. Want to know the downforce that all of these make? So he was like, yeah, for sure. How much? So one guy was like, it makes 3,035 pounds of downforce just like yo mama. Ha ha ha, got him. So he was a little bit sad, but he said, oh, okay. Hey, you guys want to know what will be the price of the car? And they were like, yeah, sure. And he was like, well, you won't ever know it. In fact, nobody will ever know it. Ha 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 ha. And the next day, when he came back at the factory, there were 3 new people. The new lead designer, Joeen Wong, the same person responsible for the Apollo IE and the De Tomaso P-72. Daniel Minsay, who worked on the record-setting Neo EP9, and you could never have guessed it, it's the guy that said the car should be a front mid-engine twin turbocharged 5.0-liter V8 from German firm Racing Dynamics, producing 1,048 horsepower and 764 pound-feet of torque, which will get it from 0 to 60 miles per hour in less than 2.3 seconds, 0 to 100 miles an hour in 4.56 seconds, and a top speed in excess of 230 miles per hour. So Dad was like, hey, M. Wong. Hello, M. Minsay. And welcome back, Mr. Front Mid-Engine Twin Turbocharged 5.0-liter V8 from German firm Racing Dynamics, producing 1,048 horsepower and 764 pound-feet of torque, which will get it from 0 to 60 miles per hour in less than 2.3 seconds, 0 to 100 miles per hour in 4.56 seconds, and a top speed in excess of 230 miles per hour. And after that awkward moment passed, they were like, so anyone have any ideas? But they didn't. And after days of going back and asking if anyone has any ideas, there was. In the darkness, a guy that nobody had really seen in weeks had been working alone on his craft. Yes, it was the front mid-engine twin turbocharged 5.0-liter V8 from German firm Racing Dynamics, producing 1,048 horsepower and 764 pound-feet of torque, which will get it from 0 to 60 miles per hour in less than 2.3 seconds, 0 to 100 miles per hour in 4.56 seconds, and a top speed in excess of 230 miles per hour guy. He came back to save the day. The hero we needed, but didn't deserve. And he was like, let's do the car all-wheel drive, but you can actually switch it to rear-wheel drive when you want to. Let's also do a race-grade hydraulic steering rack, but mostly, let's do carbon ceramic brakes. If that's not a crazy character arc, I don't know what is. The guy had another thing to show the engineers, so he said it. He said, a guy asks a girl to go to a dance. She agrees, and he decides to rent a suit. The rental has a long line, so he waits, and finally he gets a suit. He decides to buy flowers, so he goes to the flower shop. The flower shop has a long line, so he waits until he finally buys flowers. He picks the girl up, they go to the dance. There is a long line into the dance, so they wait. Finally, they get into the dance, and the guy offers to get the girl a drink. She asks for punch. So he goes to the drink table, and there is no punch line. So Dad was like, yeah? This time, it's true. You're fired. And this was the end of the career of the front mid-engine twin turbocharged 5.0-liter V8 from German firm Racing Dynamics, producing 1,048 horsepower and 764 pound-feet of torque, which will get it from 0 to 60 miles per hour in less than 2.3 seconds, 0 to 100 miles per hour in 4.56 seconds, and a top speed in excess of 230 miles per hour guy. And it was also the end of the video. Love ya!